My name is Justin, and I am a son of God and an addict, and the host of the RECO12 speaker meeting. And thanks to my God, the steps, and the fellowship of other addicts, I am living the relative happy, joyous, and free life that is promised to those living in recovery, and have been very active in the rooms of recovery since September of 2013. Welcome to the 117th meeting of RECO12. RECO12 is an organization with the mission of learning and sharing the similarities of addiction of all kinds, and gaining and sharing tools and hope from others who are trudging this road. We are an open meeting for all, no matter your life experiences and background. To learn more about RECO12, please go to www.reco12.com. That's RECO12.com, and check us out there. RECO12 is a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us working our 12th step in this manner. I'll put the information and links in the chat of the live meeting and in the show notes of the podcast if you wish to contribute to this cause. You listeners are doing some amazing work in spreading the message of RECO12. Weekly listens are going up, and the word is getting out to more and more addicts who are seeking the experience, strength, and hope that our weekly speakers share. Please continue to share with your recovery networks and continue to rate and review the podcast wherever you listen. We also have another exciting announcement. In addition to our private Facebook group, which is growing each week, and I'll put that information in the chat here and in the show notes also, RECO12 is now on YouTube. So if you're at your computer and doing whatever you want and want to get some solid recovery in while at your computer, pull up RECO12 on YouTube and have the audio playing in the background while you work. The link is in the chat and in the show notes, or you can search RECO12 in YouTube and subscribe to the channel there. Now, that is just audio that is there now. We don't have any video. It's just audio, but it's there. We look forward each week to receiving from the light reflected by our speakers from their higher power. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now, let's introduce our guest speaker for today, Rachel W., whose recovery topic will be recovery prayers coming true. Now, here's a little bit about Rachel. Rachel has been sober in SLAA for 4 years and 13 years in Al-Anon. She has worked all 12 steps and has lots of experience, strength, and hope that she loves to share. She does service in her fellowships and is a delegate representing the Los Angeles Intergroup of the SLAA Business Meeting this year. Take it away, Rachel. The floor is yours.
Hi. Thanks, Justin. My name is Rachel, and I am a very, very grateful sex, love, and fantasy addict. And I notice I'm feeling a little nervous in this moment. My heart's pounding a little bit. And I also have learned that nervousness and excitement are easy to confuse. I'm also excited to be here with you and to have this opportunity to share what I've been given. I feel very blessed to be an addict. When I before I came to SLAA, I was kind of jealous of alcoholics because I could see how tight their tribe was and, how much love they had, and the fellowship was so strong. And I never really experienced that in my first fellowship. So in SLAA, I found my tribe. And I'm super grateful. So I love prayer and I love meditation. I do lots and lots of meditation. I do all different types of meditation. One that was particularly helpful for me in this fellowship is Yoga Nidra. It helped put me back in my body. And I still use that today. And I want to talk about prayer and prayer coming true, because really recovery is about miracles for me. Yeah. And prayer is a way of opening myself to the possibility of spiritual help to the possibility of miracles. And one of my favorite prayers continues to be the set aside prayer. It's something that I really bring in step one, and the version that I use is, God, please help me set aside everything I think I know about myself, my dis-ease, these steps, and especially you, for an open heart and a new experience of myself, my dis-ease, these steps, and especially you. And this prayer came true for me early in my SLAA recovery. And I can tell you it's very humbling to bottom out in a secondary addiction when you've been in Al-Anon for 9 years. Everyone says it's the graduate program. Well, it wasn't for me. I had more to learn. And I was in a lot of pain when I came to SLAA. I felt starved. I felt so empty, just profoundly empty. And I got a sponsor right away because I was ready. I didn't know about SLAA. I have needed this program for so long. And my sponsor told me to go on 3 dates a week. She said, go on a date with yourself, go on a date with a sober fellow that you're not attracted to, and go on a date with your higher power. And I was desperate, so I did. And I remember my first date with my higher power. I decided to go on a hike in Griffith Park, be in nature. And here's how I thought this was going to go. I thought I was going to go and be blissed out, just feel joy and connection in nature, and more connected with higher power in a way than I usually do, right? I was consciously bringing in higher power, this is a date. We're here to get to know each other. Let's connect. And what happened next surprised me. It didn't really go how I expected it to go. I was walking and talking with higher power, and all of this anger and rage surged up inside me. And I thought, well, let's get real. God, let's get real. So I let her rip. And I told my higher power how angry I was. I said everything. I didn't leave anything out. I'm like, if you're really God, let's see what you got. Can you take this? Can you take all this rage, all this pain? How could you? Where have you been? I just raged and railed at God. And then eventually I paused to take a breath and listen and see if God was still there. And to my surprise, God was. And I heard God say, is there more? And I said, yeah. and I continued. I continued with my vitriol and all my pain and my rage and just blaming God. And, I just let God have it. And finally, when I had exhausted it, I said all of it. I paused again. And God said, I am yours and you are mine. And that's how I found out that I got a new higher power in my second program. I got a bigger higher power, one that I could really be that intimate with, that honest, that ugly, show that many warts. And I had a new experience of myself and my disease and the steps and my higher power. And I even, 4 years later, I still feel so moved by that experience. And I'm, practicing intimacy with my higher power one day at a time, intimacy with myself and intimacy with others. And I didn't know how to do that when I came to SLAA. I literally take classes because I just had no idea how to receive intimacy and how to give intimacy, emotional intimacy. There's a language to it. There's a deep truth to it that I'm learning. Another prayer that has come true for me is the 11th step prayer. And the version that I usually say is, Lord, make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine master, grant that I may seek not so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in forgiving that we are forgiven, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. And the way this came true for me was in my disease, I was compartmentalized. I had never really been seen and known by one person. Adultery is a part of my story, and I had one kind of intimacy with my husband and another kind of intimacy with strangers. I thought I was getting my needs met, but I was really isolating myself by compartmentalizing, and that left me feeling really empty. And so I had to learn, and I'm still learning, how to be emotionally honest and vulnerable, how to talk about my feelings. What's a feeling, And I've learned that my head is always in the future or in the past, but my body is in the present moment. Can I name what's happening right here, right now? And that makes me available for connection. And so I have a long history of conflict with my younger sister, and I can't tell you how many hysterical phone calls my Al-Anon sponsor used to get from the city in which my sister lives. I would go visit her. I would just be so triggered. I'd be so hurt, and I didn't have any conflict resolution skills, and I've been learning them. And so during quarantine, my sister asked me for help, and I had been avoiding her for nearly 2 years. I figured out how to have a great relationship with her. It was don't interact. And, and so she asked me to come help her with a house that she had moved out of. And she was living in a different house. And I thought, well, it's far enough away. It'll be okay. And I prayed about it and listened to my heart about it. And I was so surprised to find that it felt like a really good idea. And I asked my higher power, I was like, are you sure that I should do this? And the higher power was like, yes, you should definitely go do this. It's like, okay, I guess I can always go home. So, so I went to help her, and things were going pretty well. It was the right amount of like interaction and distance. And then eventually the inevitable happened and a conflict came up. And she became very activated and began speaking to me in an intense way that made me feel really disconnected. And I could feel that she was triggered. And so I asked for a pause, and I requested that she speak to me differently. She took a breath and started to speak more slowly, but then the escalation came again, and I said, I'm so sorry. I have to get off the phone. Maybe we can talk about this another time, And much to my surprise, that's never happened before. I've never been resourced enough to not shut down and leave my body completely in that situation. I was able to stay calm and say, hey, let's try again later. That alone was a miracle. And then 3 days went by, and I knew she was coming to the house to see how everything was going. During those 3 days, I prayed and prayed and prayed the 11th step prayer. I prayed. And so 3 days later, when she came to the house, I had been learning these conflict resolution skills as a result of my desire to have more connection in my life. And I used this particular thing with her. So when she came, she brought it up. She brought up the conflict. And I could hear the story in my head, like everything she was saying about it was wrong because I'm right. And I had a rebuttal for every single thing she said, right? And I put that aside. I put it aside. And I just focused on listening to her and hearing her. I became completely invested in getting her world. And I heard everything that she said to me, and then I reflected it. I said, this is what I heard you say. This is what I think I heard. Did I get that right? And she said, yes. And she had more to say. And I reflected that. And then I said, is there more? And she said, no. And I said, wow, that must have been really painful and frustrating for you. And I feel sad that that's how you experience that. What can I do to make it right? And in that moment, two things happened. My sister broke down in tears. And I realized in that moment that I don't think she had ever felt heard by her big sister before. And I felt really grateful to be able to give that to her in that moment. And another thing that happened was all of my story and my side became so unimportant to me. In fact, I felt understood in that moment. I didn't even need to say my perspective or anything. And I realized that like that need to be understood for me is a response to a rupture in connection. It's kind of a misguided attempt to like repair a rupture. And it can be repaired even if I just listen and hold space and reestablish connection with the other person, even if I don't get to say and be understood, I can feel understood when the rupture is repaired. And in the moment where she felt really heard, I felt the repair and I felt understood. And that was such a miracle in my life. It really changed me. And I really hope I get to practice that with her again. Because new conflicts continue to come up, right? It's a process. So those are two of my very favorite prayers that have definitely come true for me in my life. And another one that I really love, I love steps 6 and 7. For me, these steps are about relationship with higher power. These steps are where I learn about partnership and carrying my weight and receiving support. These steps are super important to me. And the 7th step prayer says, I'm nervous, so I made sure I had one ready. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. And I add this part, things I like about myself and things I don't like about myself. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellow humans. Give me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. So, what I realized with this prayer is that, I wrote it down. If I believe that prayers come true, then any defects of character that come up in my life, anytime I make a mistake, this too is God's will, right? If nothing in God's world is an accident, if nothing in God's world is not as it should be, then I am meant to be a flawed human being and make mistakes. And I can say in my life that what I've learned about conflict, and like, believe me, 4 years ago, I was the world's most avoidant human. Like, conflict just made me crumble and I avoided it at all costs. Like, I am a blackout people pleaser in my addiction, you know? And I have learned that when I'm people pleasing, it's like there's no one here, right? There's no one for you to encounter. It's like being alone. And so when I step into the space, when I have preferences and desires and needs and flaws, there's someone to encounter here. There's someone here. And I have learned that conflict, when you walk a spiritual path, conflict is an opportunity for connection. Conflict can be an opportunity to deepen intimacy, to repair. The process of repair is essential for relationship. So I can't say that I do this perfectly by any means, but one day at a time, my higher power helps me to be willing to embrace conflict and embrace the opportunity that's available there, and helps me learn the skills for repair, because that's where the magic is. That's where I allow myself to be encountered, to be seen, to be messy. And for me, that's the 7th step prayer coming true, right? Like my defects of character are part of the spiritual opportunity that my higher power has presented to me. You know, they become opportunities to be human, to be humble, to be messy, to be seen and known as whole. And a big piece of this addiction for me is perfectionism. And step 7 just helps me overcome that. You know, one day at a time. I still have I still have it lingering around, and I guess that's as it should be, So, yeah, that's what I wanted to share. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciate this, and I've written down several questions and several insights that your share has brought to my mind that I'd like to relay out and get your further insight on. But also want to invite our live audience here to, if you have any questions for Rachel, please type them in the Q&A link that's at the bottom of your Zoom window. Looks like two speech bubbles over the top of each other, and we'll get to those questions as we go along here. You mentioned a little bit about your primary fellowship, SLAA. Why don't you take just a minute now and tell us what that fellowship is about a little bit and how it helps you in your life?
Sure. So SLAA is a program for people who struggle with sex and love addiction. And love is in quotes, right? Because that means generally romantic love and often fantasy, right? We become addicted to an idea of love that is not unconditional. Love, capital L, real love, true love is unconditional. And I heard someone share that love is given, love is unconditional. It's not required for a relationship. Love just is. What is required for a relationship is trust and respect. And those are things that can be cultivated in service of relationship. So in addiction, there's a wonderful list of characteristics of this addiction. There are 12 characteristics, and I pretty much had all of them before I came into this program, including like using people for attention and validation and not realizing that that's what I was doing, using sex to try to get love, inadvertently, like it's manipulative, right? Like if I show up in this way, I can get my needs met, and so this is how that's showed up in my life. And yeah, working the steps in this program has been very, very deep, and the withdrawal is intense. It's a chemical withdrawal.
A higher consumption of vegetables may cut your odds of developing depression by as much as 62%. An American Cancer Society study found that women who sit for more than 6 hours a day have a 40% higher death rate. Hi, my name is Maya Acosta, and I'm a health and wellness educator and host of the Healthy Lifestyle Solutions podcast. Join me and the amazing people that I get to talk to as I set out to learn how to improve our quality of life and increase our longevity. You can listen at the Healthy Lifestyle Solutions podcast or at healthylifestylesolutions.org.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Earlier in your share, you mentioned that you had to take classes on giving and receiving intimacy, that the connections there with that. What did that look like? Was that actual classes, or was that just the classes of the classroom of life? Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's both. It's both. But I am talking about actual classes. And is it okay if I say what the organization is? Do you allow that here?
If you feel comfortable with that, yes.
Yeah, I do. In fact, I'd be happy to recommend them. It's called Authentic Relating. And a fellow in this program told me about it. And it's a place it's kind of a pragmatic approach to nonviolent communication in a way. And you get to practice speaking your feelings, speaking in the present moment, naming what's really going on for you, slowing way down, taking time to find out what that is. Normally life is just so on fast forward to me that I don't even have time. It takes a moment for me to assess myself, to get into my body and know what's going on for me, and learning how to make someone really feel heard, learning, reflecting, sharing impact, playing different games around like sentence stems to talk about real things that are happening, emotional things.
Can you give us an example of a gameplay around a sentence stem that centers around those real things?
Sure. So one of the games is really simple. You can play it with two people, or you can play it in a circle. And it goes like this. The sentence stem is, being with you, I notice. I'm leaning forward in my chair. I notice a little tension back here on my neck and some kind of like energy in my arms right here. I notice, as I'm saying that, I notice my body relaxing and calming down. And then the other person gets a chance to say, hearing that, I notice. And you go into the body. What's happening in here? Are there feelings? Are there bodily sensations? Is your mind spinning?
Thank you for walking through that. That sounds very interesting. I may have to give that a try with my wife and kids. I think that might be fun. Yeah, thank you. Okay, we have a comment that came in from the live audience. This is from Sam. Sam says, and he quotes you basically from your share. When I people please, it's like they're alone, like no one's here. And Sam says, I'm a massive people pleaser, and this helped me see how lonely my wife must feel when we interact. Also, any conflict with her, even a minor disagreement, makes me withdraw completely. Having confidence in myself and my own righteous desires and voicing those can actually bring us together, not push us apart, as I innately believe. Can you comment a little bit on that and maybe help develop that from your own experience, please, Rachel?
Yeah, I relate to that so much. I mean, that used to so be my experience in conflict, and still sometimes is, you know? And yeah, it's hard to, in the moment, remember to what can I even say here, right? What can I even say? And so I recommend, like, going to the body, or saying a feeling. It's amazing what happens when you just say how you're feeling, how you soften and the other person softens, just naming what's going on with you. A conflict is an encounter. You meet someone where they are, and if they're available for it, there can be an opportunity to say what it's like to have a conflict right now. Yeah, it's really challenging, and also, like I said, I just have to slow way down. Some things that are really helpful for me in that moment are to say, like, ooh, I notice a lot of energy has coming up in me when I hear you say that. Can we take a breath together? Or I really want us to be able to connect about this. I really want to hear you out. And in this moment, there's a lot of activation in my body, and it makes it hard for me to take in what you're saying. And I really want to hear you. Can we take a few breaths together so that I can calm down, so that I can really hear you?
And thank you for sharing that. I am such a not emotion connected to my emotions person naturally. And if someone were to come up to me and say, hey, can we take a breath together before we proceed? I might go, man, you're weird. How do you deal with that? And I would feel that way talking to somebody else, especially, hey, I'm feeling some emotions here. Can we breathe together for just a second before we talk? How do you overcome that fear of approaching somebody in that way?
Well, courage is just fear that said its prayers, or courage is being afraid and doing it anyway, right? Sometimes it helps to say the reason why, to, to say, it helps me sometimes to take a breath when I'm feeling activated. If we just move forward, there's a chance that I might leave my body and disconnect from our relationship for a moment. So, saying the why can help it feel and also naming that, like, okay, this might sound weird. Right? Like, and also just being like, well, sometimes life is awkward. There's something kind of intimate about awkwardness, right?
I love that. This might sound weird, but there's something about awkwardness. My one of my daughters just owns her. She calls it her weirdness, and she's like, you know what? If I'm not weird, I'm not me. I've got to be me, And I wish I had that courage, but it's good. Thank you for sharing this stuff. All right, I have another question for you. I loved how you talked about your first date with your higher power. And that anger and turmoil that just built up and boiled over, and yelling and screaming and being angry at God. And yet your higher power says, is there anything more? And then you had a similar situation with your sister where you said, is there anything more? I see this parallel here. Mm-hmm. Can you help connect that maybe in different ways? I don't know. I think it was really powerful. Is there anything else to that parallel? Is there anything more?
Yeah, this is a skill that I learned in authentic relating, which is to make space, just make lots of space for all that is. I find that when someone is activated, and when someone's crying, it can be disconnecting and shaming in some way, to be like, don't cry, or to encourage them to, like, calm down, right? The idea is to really make space and welcome whatever is alive in them, just welcome their whole experience, because then they can re-regulate around it. And yeah, I didn't even put that together, actually. That is kind of like an amazing thing that my higher power did. My higher power was like, yeah, there's room for all of you here. It's safe to be you here, and I love you unconditionally. And I am definitely big enough to handle all of your rage. Come at me. And I had never felt that in my life. And that did give me a sense of, like, how all of us are kind of just actually a child inside, right? Just kind of having a tantrum. We have an unmet need, and all of our lives we've been told that you're too much, and you're too loud, but to really just let someone, like, have their experience, that's the first tenet of authentic relating, which is welcome everything. And it can be challenging. It's really hard to welcome some energies, some charge,
Trouble sleeping? If so, you're not alone. I'm Ashley Lambert, host of the Very Sleepy podcast, where you fall asleep fast to short stories and meditations and delta wave music. You might not even make it through the entire episode before you drift off to sleep. Very sleepy. Fall asleep fast. Good night.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And higher power replied to you, I'm yours and you are mine, even after all of this. And even though I don't know that you said that to your sister, that may be what she felt after that interaction with you. She felt accepted, and that, you guys are connected. You're each other's, even with hard things. What a beautiful thing. Thank you for sharing that and helping me see it, because that was powerful for me.
Mm.
All right. We have a question that came in from Barbara from our live audience. She says, "Hi, Rachel. Listening to your relationship with your sister reminds me of mine with my mom. I will be with her in December for 15 days in Brazil. I'm feeling already all the fear to see her and get codependent with her right away. Any advice to be able to have that pause before pushing the rope?"
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like you've definitely already got some good ideas. I see you've been praying already. Yes, help is available. Higher power has the power to help you, right? And when I go into a situation with anyone who pushes my buttons, I need to really resource myself, before I go, like make sure I get lots of sleep, make sure I packed well, you know, remember halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, and also I find that like go little by little, be really gentle with myself. Remember that I can make changes, but I have to do it in manageable amounts, right? So I find ways to like maybe start with an hour with my sister, and that hour goes well. I know for sure that I can act right for an hour. And then after that hour, like I definitely need to go for a walk, or I need to find a meeting, or phone a friend, find something else to do, but just like limit the little chunks of time, because I know I can act right for like this amount of time. And over time that expands, and then I also just need to forgive myself if I get it wrong, if I overestimate how long I can behave appropriately and make a mistake. And if I do that, then I get to initiate the process of repair, right? It's in service of the relationship. So I promise your best is enough, and just gentleness, break it down and just, figure out what length of time you're confident that you can be in alignment with yourself and who you are. And if your alignment falls out, like take a little break, take some time to integrate, be with yourself, be in your body, move your body, something, be with you.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that, Rachel. All right, another question from Sam from our live audience, and this follows up a little bit on your experience with your sister. Sam says, "I don't quite know how to actively listen. I try constantly, but I find it almost impossible to just listen to my wife, like you described with your sister. How did you do that? What was going on in your mind as she expressed herself?"
Oh, I had help. I had help from a power greater than myself. I know that for sure. So let me just affirm, you don't have to do it alone, call in some help, right? And maybe this is something that can be broken down into little pieces too. Sometimes when someone's talking, I actually let them know ahead of time, like, hey, I may need to interrupt you periodically so that I can take in what you've said. Because I find that sometimes I just know for myself that sometimes I'm slower taking in information, especially because if I'm activated and I'm like really spinning in my mind, right, then I need to slow down and take a moment to like come back into my body and use my ears. And as I'm listening, imagine that I'm going to say it back to them. And yeah, sometimes the most helpful thing really is to ask to slow down. And often if I say, hey, this is in service of our connection, and I'm really working on listening, I want to hear you. So if you can slow down and take pauses I can practice doing that better. How would that be for you? You know? I hope that's helpful. Oh, you're muted, I think.
Thank you. Love it. I love what you just shared there. And it helps me. I am also like a squirrel. My brain, even when I'm trying to engage, just starts darting off. And I love the calling in that higher power, because I can't do it on my own. It's not going to happen. Before we started recording in our conversation before this, Rachel, you mentioned how important the serenity prayer was to you, especially as you began working the steps in step 1. Can you kind of share with us the serenity prayer and how that has come true and been answered in your life also?
Absolutely. Well, to begin with, serenity is not something that I had before I came to these rooms, you know. I was constantly in turmoil, you know. I was trying to fix myself, you know. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Well, first of all, I had no idea what I could and couldn't change. Like, I didn't know where. I thought I could change other people, you know. So there was a lot of learning for me to do around, like, what is it that I can change? What is it that I can change? And the steps helped me and continue to help me deepen my learning and understanding of where I do have power and where I don't, right? I grew up in an alcoholic home. You know, I'm a textbook adult child of alcoholics, and we get all kinds of confusing messages about what we're responsible for. You know, I got all that messaging, and I didn't know. I wasn't clear. I thought I was supposed to be managing everyone around me. I thought I was responsible for everyone else's feelings. You know, and I grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can. Yeah, it takes courage to change. You know, making a choice to change is stepping into the unknown. You know, if it's uncomfortable, you're probably doing it right. You know, it should feel awkward. It should feel weird. That means that I'm not running around the track that I used to always run around. You know, it means I'm in new territory. I'm on the road less traveled, right? Yeah.
Thank you. And I love the courage part. In the last, 6 or so months, I was working with a sponsee, and we were going through the process of figuring out who his higher power was. And we talked about different traits that his higher power needed to have. And well, I invited him to discover what traits he needed his higher power to have. And he brought up a trait that I had never heard somebody say before, or I had never said before. Maybe it was just an assumption, or maybe I just never thought of it, but it was courage. My God has to be courageous. And that really affected me. And it made me go, wow, I need to add that to my God, my higher power, and say, higher power, you have to be courageous, because like what we've talked about earlier, these little conversations, hey, can we breathe together? I've got to have courage that I don't have, that I need my higher power to have. What are some of the attributes of your higher power that, as you came to and are coming to understand God as God is to you, what are some of those attributes that mean the most to you?
My higher power is hilarious. Hilarious. There have been so many times where there's literally humor in the synchronicity or the way that something unfolds. My higher power loves to surprise and delight me. You know, my higher power is so much bigger than me, and like so not human, right? Like it's not appropriate to bring that much rage and vitriol to any human. You know, you can't. But higher power is here for it. In fact, I think in some ways higher power delights in it. I think my higher power embraces life. and wants me to live life and be life and experience life and variety and contrast and ups and downs, wants to know life and experience life through me. And that's partnership. My higher power is my partner. We do this together. We do it hand in hand, right? I am an essential part of all that is, right? My higher power wants me to be doing this journey, whatever it looks like, growing, learning, and wants me to be grateful for the journey, because my higher power is grateful to see how it happens.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful. Beautiful. All right. Right now, if you have any final words of wisdom before we close up, I'd love to hear some of those, and then we'll get into the closing readings and move forward.
Yeah, let me see if something comes through. I think what I'm getting is just space, leaving space for higher power to come through. I find I feel most connected in stillness when I can come to stillness. Higher power is right there. And faith is a choice. Faith is a choice. I can choose a lens of faith through which to see my life. And if I don't choose that, then I'm a victim of my life. The 12 steps is about empowerment for me. And I choose empowerment. I choose faith. I choose to see my life through this lens. This lens gives me an opportunity to live God's will for me, which I am 100% certain is for me to be happy, joyous, and free.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rachel. That was a great RECO12 weekly speaker meeting for all addicts and those wanting to learn more about addiction and the recovery therefrom. Please consider joining our private Facebook group. The link's in the show notes and in the chat. And participate in our community, asking questions and answering others' questions that may come up. Next week, it'll be a little bit different. I will be traveling during the normal recording period, so I will release one of our old favorites to be listened to in podcast format a little bit before noon Central Time so that you can still get your RECO12 recharge in podcast format. We'll be back to our regular live meetings on Friday, September 16th, when we will hear from Richie Norton, who is an author who recently wrote a book that touches lots of 12-step concepts specifically from the 12 questions that many of us answered to qualify as members of our recovery fellowships. His new book is called Anti-Time Management, and he will be discussing the application of those qualifying questions with us. Now, let's launch off into the rest of our day with the 11th step prayer, the prayer of St. Francis that Rachel will say for us.
Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, and it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Everybody keep coming back. Come trudge this happy road with me. Work it. You are worth it.
carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching